Welcome to From the Left. My name is Stephen Leon, and I'm running for the House of Representatives in Maryland's 8th Congressional District in the Democrat Party. Thank you to the GCD Network for hosting this live stream and all the viewers that are here tonight, the thousands of viewers. Had a little bit of technical issues on my end, so we're just going to go ahead and speed through this. Pardon, this mic is... Anyways, so tonight we have Dr. Aaron McKain. He hit me up through X on social media, and I was looking at his platform, what he's about. We can relate to a lot of things with its AI, disinformation, and how that correlates to Amendment 1 and what we can do. So I had a pre-interview with him earlier this week, and it went really well. There are a lot of things that we have in common. So I thought it would be cool to have him on the show, and he can tell us what he's working on. And we're just going to go ahead, Aaron, as you know, like as we spoke, you're just going to tell me the spiel. Tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, no, fantastic. First off, man, it's so cool of you to have me on. And like I said when we talked earlier this week, these things are usually a bit of a bummer. So I'm super stoked to be able to talk to you. And you're handling the tech issues like a champ. So you have the patience of a guy running for Congress. But anywho, I'm going to do like the 2-minute spiel because I think it kind of sets the table for your listeners a little bit. My name is Dr. Aaron McKain. For the last 20 years, I've been a legit professor, guy on the news, expert, guy in the room who studies and builds shit to fix what happens when unregulated technology and runaway political culture and constitutional law that hasn't kept up with any of it all sort of beat the shit out of each other. And as me and Steve were talking earlier this week, I've had a very odd career doing this. I was really early on a lot of disinformation and AI problems because I weirdly study comedians to find like the glitches where technology and law and politics sort of collide. So I built a nationally scalable disinformation fighting platform for students with Ohio State, a Fortune 500 company way back in 2005. They thought they were going to be MySpace, but it was really Atari, so that kind of fell apart. But then I got fast-tracked to like higher ed Illuminati stuff and was a speechwriter for Time Magazine's University President of the Year. Bailed on that track to keep working on my little Manhattan project. Ended up at the wokest school in America, running it as a free speech art collective. When Trump got elected, I got freaked out, tired of preaching to the choir, and took a job as an echo chamber diversity hire at a Bible college. And me and those students and our partners started the Institute for Digital Humanity, which is, I think after the election, maybe the last bipartisan, multi-faith, immediately scalable AI ethics, disinformation, free speech, kind of higher ed Manhattan project left standing. So it's been a kind of bumpy, weird ride. How am I doing, man? I've had to do this speech so many times. I worry I'm going fast or not fast enough. But
No. So that was the thing. I remember I was telling you when we were talking. It's like if you had done any music, and it's like when you're Metallica's coming to mind. If you've seen how they, or at least there's this one documentary on how they jam out, right? They jam and then they find the hooks in that song. They get together in a room, there's like a whiteboard in the background, and they're like, I like this part, I like this part, and they work together to find that. It's spontaneous. So our conversation was like that. So just be you, and it's just in our kind of replicating. I remember I'd asked you, are you a lawyer?
No, I have a master's in law. My first wife was worried that we'd have like a full-blown Saul Goodman situation if I had my law degree, but I got really lucky and I ended up at this really strange interdisciplinary program between law and the humanities at Ohio State. And that's where I sort of got, frankly, like the 20-year head start on a lot of this tech stuff. It's not that I'm a genius, but like our federal tax dollars paid to make Ohio State the #1 place in the world, which other countries knew and sent their students there for this weird niche-y thing that I study. When that weird niche-y thing was seen as like the way to solve all of our problems with people not talking to each other or academic disciplines not talking to each other. So I was just like really right place, right time on a lot of that. It's called narrative theory. And
when?
when was that? I started on September 11th. I showed up for grad school, Howard Stern told me and my wife that the buildings were collapsing. And and then I finally got that thing done in 2011. It's a real PhD, so it took a hot minute, especially while you're working. But yeah, it was again, right place, right time is most of being a person in this world who is successful and forward looking. Like, be prepared, but like make sure you like pick those moments where you can actually change the national conversation.
Yeah, it's a little bit of what you know and who you know. Are you a
Yeah.
comedian?
I'm not a comedian. I've done stand up 2.5 times. Once when I was still like a drinking guy, and I once got into a fight with Doug Stanhope by heckling him really hard, and he brought me up on stage to argue with him about libertarianism. So that's half a time. And then I actually did stand up for the, I guess, like first official time as a functional human this spring, because the reason our Manhattan project's a little off the rails is somebody tried to shoot me in my living room Halloween 2021, and someone else did something that made us evacuate all the students during the Chauvin verdict, which I think people forget how spicy Minneapolis is. So like, me and these students did all this stuff while like hosting the Floyd Memorial, emergency food banks, all of that. But yeah, after this Joker shot at me, I had like a shitload of trauma and I couldn't process it. So I had to like hop up on a stand-up stage just to explain to them what I just explained to your listeners, because it's a little nuts before you put in like bomb scares and bullets. It was already pretty extra, so you have to laugh at it. Or
Somebody shot you in your living room?
they tried to shoot at me, so it missed me by about 4 feet. And it wasn't solved, and so I don't talk a whole lot about it. It was like 50-50, is it a stray, is it intentional? But people who make those calls have told me to be careful, just wanting it to be a stray. So, yeah.
Yeah, gun violence is a thing, and I'm glad that it missed.
Yeah.
That's cool that like with entertainment and fusion, like we are a free country. You will see things. Having pop culture mixed in with politics is nothing new. I remember one thing we were talking about how, let's see, it's a very small percentage of the country, regardless of what you might think politically in a political narrative, where most people are totally fine with homosexuality, right? There you will see something on social media or something like that, and when you see it, just the psychology of anyone opposing it, you think it's like absolute, and it's just the way that computers affect us in that way. But like someone like Ron White, when Ron White, when he or he calls himself tater salad, or we're all it just depends on how far you're willing to go. There's acceptance there, and he's not really saying that he's gay or whatever it is. It's just that, I mean, biologically, like if you know enough about, say, if you went through high school science, like you get it, and then you just laugh and you move on. So that's really cool. That I thought like that would be neat to see on how like lots of stand-ups, comics or whatever, musicians, left or right. You can't just say that it's not okay for one person. Whether they're in sports or whatever it is. I mean, it's that person's choice if they want to speak up on whatever matter that it is, and then whatever clauses or liabilities it might be for, I don't know, someone in the NFL or just the nature of a team. And I don't want to get too much involved if the NFL should. It's none of my business if the NFL were to it's not some kind of rule for all their players to just you can't talk about politics. If that was a team thing, I don't know, whatever. I'm a Giants fan. We don't have cheerleaders. I'm not going to go and tell them, why don't we have cheerleaders? You know what I mean? Like, and I already get it. And it's not a big deal to me. You know what I mean? So
it's funny you should say that, because I have no shame and you seem to have a little shame. So like, as somebody who has been now, like, remember, I spent 7 years of my I spent most of my career on sort of like what I would say would be old school union center left or like progressive left like issues, but like living wage stuff back in the day.
Yeah.
And now that I've done 7 years on the other side of reality, what people forget is it's not just like everyone says we live in two different worlds. Yes, but like we actually do live in two different worlds, but there are things that bridge those cultures, which frankly, with students, it's comedy, it's sports, and it's like bad Marvel movies, which I'm tired of talking about. But we sent some students down to Vikings headquarters a couple years ago, trying to get them to take the bait on getting them to help us out with some of the ways that like AI or like policing algorithms can be horribly discriminatory towards people of color. That's why we were working with like the ACLU and scholars at Stanford and other local organizations to get facial rec banned in Minneapolis, which that coalition actually pulled off. But yeah, football players, though, I think that's a harder sell. Comedians, it just seems like this should be easy. Like, I almost want a t-shirt that says, like, this AI bullshit would not have happened on Norm Macdonald's watch or something. Like, there's just a sense of, like, if you think about the old school comedians who used to kind of keep an eye on bullshit or keep an eye on censorship or keep an eye on tricky forms of prejudice, I just wish that we could like get them all to stop yelling at each other long enough to see that they can still fight together on those causes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Music is definitely one of them. I mentioned Metallica, you know what I mean? Like how they're able to do it independently, but they're more about the psychology that goes on in your mind. And I was just telling myself, I was listening to Wherever I May Roam on the eponymous Black album. And it's like that album is the most moderate metal album of all time. You know,
Yeah.
it's flawless. It's just they took some innovations to, but anyways, so comedy too. Like if we can get up there, whatever it is, you know, and just things that we don't fully understand, or God, there's this really cool comedian. She was on HBO. I can't remember her name, but she's like a Bernie supporter, and like the way that she talked about it, you know what I mean? It kind of gets in your head. That doesn't mean that everything that Bernie Sanders says is true or amenable. It's just that it's just good to see, you know what I mean? We should be able to be okay with that. And then, you know, and then of course there's certain, when it comes to misinformation, you know, what happened with Netflix, you know, people, I mean, that really gives the rise to Trump, right? It's like, here's a guy, Trump is a guy from New York City, born into wealth, and then he's put in front of a camera his entire life, and then he says that it's going to be this way, and it hasn't really worked, and then now he's trying to do all these different things. I saw an AP poll where it was at 56% of Americans have no confidence in his cabinet choices. So, you know, the pattern, the numbers are against him. Let's see if he's willing to work on some of these things that we're all looking for. They're just like you're saying, you know what I mean? Like you take away some of the argumentation in there and you find, or even the parties themselves, remove that layer and you see that these issues are nonpartisan. So
yeah, I think that's right. I think one of the reasons I was really bummed out by Harris and Walz, I mean, let's face it, the absurdity that AI barely made a dent in that presidential campaign is why I am of a pox on both your houses sort of frame of mind. And it's just like I have a very weird job. Tax dollars and donors pay to make me a weird Doctor Strange, just trying to like keep both sides of reality from fragmenting more. I'm kind of being half serious. And like, what bums me out is everyone is so worried about talking about what their gut is telling them about AI censorship and surveillance that we're dropping the ball on really obvious coalitions. So like me and my kids were able to get pro-life evangelicals and pro-choice lefties to agree that like medical surveillance is bad or reproductive surveillance is bad, because even if they are pro-life, they don't particularly want black helicopters in the reproductive organs of their wife and sister and grandma, and that's an easy layup. And that's a huge piece of the puzzle on medical privacy that nobody's pursuing. Take our facial recognition ban. All we did was go to the left and say, this thing's horribly racially discriminating. Do you not like it? Yes. And then you have the people on the right and you say, this is just surveillance by the government. Do you like surveillance by the government? No. And then you've got a coalition, and I think the mistake the left makes is this purity test where then we have to like go back to both sides and be like, we got you to say yes, but can we fuck it up by reminding you of all the reasons why you don't totally agree with these people all the time? And I think AI, disinformation, free speech give us these new avenues to remind us about what brings us together, not what tears us apart. So that's mainly why I still get out of bed in the morning relatively optimistic about the country.
yeah, to be useful. So this is a lot of stuff that's on your platform. If we were to go to your website, we would see a lot of the stuff that you're talking about.
Yes. So we have a website, www.theidh.org, where we have sort of been gathering these materials and putting them back together. And we are talking to potential partners and investors on turning it into a platform for schools or community organizations or governments. So like that's kind of where I'm spending my days, is doing everything I can to ensure that this is a public good and not just given to some company. Because again, I'm a very peculiar free agent at this moment in time. And, our nonprofit isn't affiliated with anyone. So the challenge is sort of getting some grassroots support while we go chase investors to kind of put this in a proper nonprofit B Corp and all that good stuff. Because I kind of don't want to give it to one team or the other. And I don't want to just give it to some random tech bro. So, I mean, as somebody in politics, man, it's hard sometimes to get the funding for the right thing, and it's real easy to get the funding for the wrong thing. And so we're just trying to do the right thing and hope that gravitates some support, frankly.
Yeah, when it comes to funding, that's going to be a new game for me. I've been campaigning somewhat against the traditional forms of funding, and how that, lobbyist bundling and things like that can, with all the different corporations and nonprofit organizations, essentially funding whatever politician it is, that stuff eventually stalemates everything. So I've been very cautious. My last campaign was independent, and but so it's kind of like, and again, unless you're a guy like Bernie or maybe Ross Perot or what have you, then it's difficult. So now that I'm running in the party, and to be able to find those very specific, I'd be very, very careful with where I get my funding from. One of those labor unions, definitely, and that's blue collar and white collar and the creative. I totally want to if I had a bias, it'd probably be like in the creative, but I don't blue collar work, my
public violence thing. I just decided that my public statement is, for the first time in my life, I genuinely liked all of the candidates as human beings, whether or not I shook them out, just because, shoot presidents and people or whatever, right? So putting that to the side, what I think is striking to me is Gen X is a very under-mobilized political contingency. And I think part of the reasons for that is what was sort of holding that chunk of the left together, and I'm just going to call it the cool left, the metal left, the music left. It was often free speech stuff, and that was just about it. Don't fuck with people, don't abuse your power, although I think we didn't say it in really polite ways like that in the 90s, but there was a lot of that, and a lot of fuck you, don't tell us what to do, and free speech stuff. And I think, again, AI presents such a unique opportunity to reunite this Gen X base, the kind of cool Gen X base, because we're too fucking old to get our jobs displaced at 57 and have to figure out how we navigate some sort of post-AI dystopian hellscape. And I think, if nothing else, that's a pretty good reason to get folks our age involved in this issue. It is purely just the mathematics of if you're in PR, if you're in accounting, if you're in any of these professions that are going away, you need to kind of assert your rights now and figure out how this country is going to land this plane, or it's going to be a bumpy 50s to 60s that I think nobody's going to want.
Yeah, that's one thing think I do a pretty good job when it comes to listening to everyone. I'm on the cusp. I was born in 1981. My aunt, of course, is Gen X. We had an Atari, and just relating in so much with documentaries and just talking to people. But there are those fundamental things that we have to find the proper regulatory balances when it comes to technology and everything else, and how that's going to affect everyone. You know what I mean? So, and yeah, lobbying's a big thing about that, and that's why, I've there's a couple of items that I've been working on. I mentioned to you in our interview. It's the Information Technology and Artificial Intelligence Act, empower IT departments to manage that along with their HR departments at a federal level, create that fundamental protection, and then also the People's Safeguard from Artificial Intelligence Act. That's when AI is going to get to such a powerful place that we can't contain it. It just makes sense to contain it and validate it through whatever third parties, and then we can implement it rather than just having it unregulated and then have it take over everything. And I'm not trying to spread any panic out there, but that's like a real thing. We don't know. Like, let's say with the atomic bomb, you know what I mean? How the testing, like the theories were there and everything like that. And there was what was it? If you've seen that movie Oppenheimer, that's probably the best thing, where they were afraid that once, if you were to detonate such a weapon, that it would cause a chain reaction in the atmosphere, and then there's no more atmosphere. They're worried about that, but then the math wasn't there. So as all comparisons break down, we talk about artificial intelligence, and the experts are saying this shit could go rogue, or even then, like it might not. It might be a wonderful AI and take care of all of us, maybe, and just. But the way that it's behaving, it's no different. I like to use a lot of pop culture references where, I mean, one, just realistically, AI has no preponderance for a biochemical reward. And it's also a creation of our own image. We like, when we trust one another, we jock each other around, we contradict ourselves or whatever it is. But also we can do some really terrible stuff just for the sake of it. You know what I mean? And just for the sport or fun of it. And AI could very well adapt to that kind of thing. So we don't know if AI is going to be some sort of angel presence or devil presence or whatever it is. It could be both. It could just tear us apart. And it wouldn't know any better. Or maybe but we have to regulate it. We have to be able to listen to the experts. I mentioned that I'm working with Pause AI, just like with you, impartially, or anyone that comes on my show. I need to preserve that, and I think if more people thought that way, it's one of the reasons why John Adams is my favorite president, and because of his impartiality. If you know what went on in our American Revolution, on how he defended the British soldiers, and that gave him over in time eventually, kind of because he believed in the rule of law, he believed in the due process, evidence, things like that. So we need to be able to do that. But once, just even now, you see how kind of split we are with what is real and what isn't, what's opinion, what's fact. That's why I advocate for that media bias chart. You know what I mean? You can check that out at fonusmedia.com, media literacy. And even then, we could, there's other things I adapted into there too, where it's the visual capitalist, you know what I mean? There's things that we can create when we look at data, and if we're also being literate. So this new administration coming in, it's going to be interesting to see what they're capable of doing under the law, what they're not going to be capable, and how it kind of plays out. So I'm going to be right on it and do my best to find that balance in principle. It sounds like you're about to, regardless of all the party bullshit and all the narratives, find what is true, back it up, and then put it out there and try to get everybody to work together. And as you know, that can be, I get flack from left and right. But I believe that there's an 80% of us that can see things reasonably for being genuine. And it's not just a intuition that you can see on camera by someone who knows what they're talking about. It's backing it up with that data. Incredible.
I think that's exactly right. I want to be sensitive of the time, but I will just say this. A, thank you for having me on. And B, are we bailing at 7:30?
Yeah, we're going to have to go out of the sets. My bad. It is exactly 8:30 right now. My apologies to the audience, and maybe I'll have you on next year. You can let us give us an update on what you're working and what you're working on and how it's progressed. And
fantastic. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man.
I apologize again for everybody with the tech difficulties. It happens, but I will see you next week, and have a good evening.
Take care.